is November 17th, 2021. I'd like to officially welcome everyone to Ltd Board of Directors regular meeting. This meeting goes for 2 hours from 3:30 to 5:30. And thank you all for taking the time to be here. So I officially call this meeting to order. I'd like to start with roll call. I'm going to start with Michelle Weber.
Here.
Thank you, Michelle. And Susan Cox.
Present.
Thank you, Susan. Don Norden.
Here.
Thank you, Don. Emily Secord.
Here.
Thank you, Emily. Gino Grimaldi.
Here.
Thank you, Gino. And Pete Knox.
Here.
Thank you so much. We've got a pretty packed agenda today. Got some great things happening today. So I'm just going to start off with my comments. So I'm sure the biggest news is we've got 2 new board members. So huge, warm welcome to Pete and Gino. Long awaited. We're so excited to have you here. So I thought it'd be really fun just to start off. I'm just going to ask you both to say hi, just give a quick background about who you are, and then why you're excited to be on the LTD board. So I'm putting you on the spot, but we're just so thrilled to have you. I wanted everyone to hear from you both first. So Pete, can you kick us off, please? Is Pete frozen for everybody else?
Yeah, he appeared, yeah.
He might be faking just so he doesn't have to go first, but we'll let him off the hook. Gino, can you start for us?
Sure, happy to. It's great to be here, and thanks for the warm welcomes from folks. I've lived in this area for probably 25 years. Worked in local government. For a time, I was assistant city manager for the city of Springfield, took a brief break and went down to the city of Ashland, worked down there for 3 years, but found my heart back here in the metro area and came back and was the city manager for about 13, 14 years. I've been retired for 2 years, enjoy that immensely. Looking forward to get involved in LTD issues. I know that in my time in working in local government, public transit is a very important part of the health of a community in many ways, other than just serving, not just, but serving the users. It's an integral part of our economy. It's an integral part of our transportation system. And I look forward to contributing to helping the board meet the goals that have been established and the wonderful strategic plan that's been put together.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Gino. Pete, can you just give us a quick background, and then why are you excited to be on this board?
Well, thanks, Caitlin. It's a real quick background. My name's Pete Knox, and I've spent years in the software industry in Seattle. Grew up here. I've been a transit writer all of my life. I've written many transit systems. I've been interested in public policy all my life. I've been involved locally here in Eugene with the neighborhood associations. I've served 2 terms as Neighborhood Leaders Council co-chair. I've still serve on a couple of city committees, and I've been on the strategic planning committee for LTD for the last year or so. And I'm excited to be here because I think transit is an incredibly important part of bringing a community together, not to overuse our vision statement, but I think it's true, and it serves the public in many ways that the public doesn't even realize, and so I'm happy and to look forward to the opportunities we're going to do.
Thank you, Pete. That's great. I think we all feel very lucky to have you both here. It's amazing the time that you've both spent in the community. You're pillars of the community, and so we're just so thrilled that you are both on board, and we're just happy to help support you, and just we're so excited you're here, and it's so fun to see a full screen, and we can't wait to see you in person one of these days as well. I've got more good news. Dawn Norden and myself as board members had the opportunity and the pleasure to go to the APTA conference and expo in Florida last week. APTA is American Public Transportation Association. And it's this great event over a course of a few days where there's a mixture of vendors where we got to see lots of great stuff. And I'll let Dawn chime in just a second. And we also got to see a lot of great presentations as well. So really, really educational. And I don't know about you, Dawn, but it was energizing. And you were definitely drinking from a fire hose because it's like, learn this about the software, learn this about electric buses, but it was so great. And I want to give a shout out to Kalina Beard. She gave an absolute fantastic presentation on equity, attended by well over 100 people. Just really great job. And I had to give credit in my presentation to the LTD staff about all the great work they did for the strategic business plan and all the work they have been doing many, many years before I ever came. But LTD staff, I hope we represented you well. And the one thing I would say that I learned, and it's important for board members to know, is LTD is nationally recognized. People go, oh, you're from Lane Transit District? Oh, I've heard you doing these great things. And we are not just on par with other national agencies, we're ahead of them. So it was so cool to just see how highly regarded LTD is. And I highly encourage other board members, please get plugged into APTA and please put the next expo on your calendar. I think it would be an eye-opening experience for everybody. Dawn, is there anything that you wanted to say about your experience? Unmute. We're missing it. You're on mute.
Yeah. Okay. I was just going to say the next APTA conference is in Seattle, and it's next October. And I just want to give some praise to Caitlin. She was on one of the panels, actually the last panel of the whole season. But she and Mark Ash brought it on, so we were all familiar with him. And I think she did a good presentation of the feeling of the conference. And it's kind of a basic shift in consciousness about what is the primary goal of public transportation. It wasn't so much ridership as we have been kind of focused on in the past, but going through the COVID pandemic, and every transit agency in the country had the same charts that we saw all of last year with the ridership just diving in, but then realizing that, it's really like our mission statement says, and Pete mentioned, we're the connector of the community. All of those essential workers had to get to where they were going and get home. And LTD and all of the public transit agencies across the country did that service. And I just want to kind of bring that consciousness up, share that with the rest of the industry. And I was also pleased to see our Congressman Peter DeFazio came in and spoke in one of the theaters, and everyone in the theater gave him a standing ovation just when he walked on the stage. That's how important our congressional delegation is to the national scene. And even if you watch the signing of the infrastructure bill, Nancy Pelosi made a point of mentioning Peter DeFazio, and in the background you could hear the cheering of all the people who appeared at that signing ceremony. And President Biden also mentioned him in his regards. So I'm very pleased to have the representation that we have on the national level and the recognition, as Caitlin was saying, that LTD's a bit ahead of the curve. I sent a couple of emails back to staff people at LTD about things that I thought, okay, are we doing this? And I get a reply back, oh yeah, we're going to make a report on that next month. And oh, okay. This was what the national organization was being informed about, and LTD was already on board. So I feel really proud to work with this organization, and I'm glad to be associated. I think all of us should be. That's enough.
Well said, Dawn. And that's a great segue. I also want to recognize and I won't just spend our whole time talking about Board Members Day, but I want to say thank you to Michelle to Susan Cox. Susan and I had the opportunity to actually be with Representative DeFazio and Senator Wyden on last Friday, as they did a press release with Heather Buck, talking about the new infrastructure bill and just the impact on our community. And so, just as Don said, Representative DeFazio, I mean, just the energy and the appreciation was amazing. Susan, do you have anything you want to say about last Friday? And thank you so much for taking the time to go to that.
Well, I think Pete was there too. So that was.
Pete, I'm so sorry
nice
you were
be
there.
able
I need to
meet him.
apologize.
Yeah.
I'm so sorry.
Yeah. It was great. I think that we can't overstate the significance of having Peter DeFazio in our front yard. It makes us, it's an incredible opportunity, and I think that we're very lucky, and certainly Senator Wyden in his role. So it was a nice day.
Yes, and yes, Pete, thank you so much for coming. And Bill Bradley was there. We had some union reps there. It was a great showing, Tiffany Edwards. So thank you to everyone that attended that as well on behalf of LTD. And then the last thing I'd say is actually, I wanted to just thank Best for the rally, and I believe Michelle Weber attended. Michelle, is there anything you want to say on the appreciation rally?
Thank you. I would just like to express my sincere appreciation to Best for coordinating those efforts to support and recognize and appreciate our bus operators who have spent this pandemic time just in a, it's been really tough on them, and their dedication and their commitment to our community, and just really appreciate us taking a moment to help all of us celebrate our operators.
Thank you so much, Michelle. Mark and I apologize we couldn't be there. That's when we were in Florida. Appreciate everyone that attended, appreciate our drivers and our community partners like Best. So big round of applause for all of our drivers, our LTD staff, and of course our community partners. So with that, I will turn it over to Mark for comments from the general manager.
Yeah, thanks for that. And thank you all for representing LTD to run these events. It's important, and I really appreciate that you take the time to do that. So a couple things. We talked about the infrastructure bill, and that's exciting. And we will be drafting a letter of thanks to our delegation from the board, and for Caitlin's signature to let them know we really appreciate the work they do. It's a meaningful work for our area, and so we want to acknowledge that to them. And then another piece of good news is we've got a raise grant that from our partners got it, mainly City of Eugene and Springfield, for the Franklin Corridor project that includes upgrades to our MX system. And so we're really excited about that. It's $19 million, and gets us a good start in that project. So that's another piece of good news. And other than that, we're good. We can move on.
Perfect. Thank you. Lots of good news. So the last thing, I just want to make sure if anyone in this group had anything additional to say. Does anyone have any announcements from the board of directors? Okay, great. The last thing I want to let everyone in this group know today is that we're so excited Gina and Pete are here, but they're not totally official just yet. So unfortunately they can't be voting today, although they can be part of all the discussion. So when you hear me skip over them for any items that we're voting on, I just wanted to explain that was why. It'll be in a few days and then they'll be good to go. We're going to move on to Employee of the Month, and Mark is presenting that. So Mark, back to you.
Yeah, and it's really my pleasure to talk about Corey Graham. He's our IT systems administrator. He's been around since 2016 and has, kind of worked his way up. Really started help desk, but we recognized his talents really early on, and he's now your systems administrator. And he's really kind of the go-to guy in IT when, things aren't quite working the way they should. But he was mainly recognized because we had a major outage because a contractor hit a water pipe or did something and water went into a server closet in one of our facilities. And so water and electronics do not work well together. And so Corey just kind of took the bull by the horns, figured out what he needed to do, stepped in, and basically made sure that we could continue operating in just a matter of a couple hours. And so that's really difficult in that environment. But, you know, Corey's just a great example of the employees we have here that are committed to the work we do, that put in the extra effort to make sure that, you know, things work. And you know, we don't get 100% right all the time, but you know, it's we've got employees working every day to get to 100%, and Corey's one of them. So congratulations to Corey, and I'm glad to recognize him as Employee of the Month.
Thanks for sharing that, Mark. And thank you, Corey. We appreciate you being such a valuable team member and being great at troubleshooting. That is an important skill to have when you're in IT, right? So thank you so much, Corey. So let's go ahead and move on. Oh.
Mark, is Corey now filling the position that Robin had?
No, Don, he's not. Okay. No, yeah. Robin's technically still here.
All right, thank you. Let's go ahead and move on to audience participation. And Camille, can you take over, please?
Thank you, Caitlin. I will go ahead and read the instructions really quickly for anyone who may not be aware of them. To indicate that you would like to provide public testimony, please use the raise your hand button. For those attending via phone only, press *9 on your phone to raise your hand. When it is your time to speak, your name will be called. For those attending via phone only, the last 4 digits of your phone number will be called. Please state your name, city of residence, and who you are representing for the audio record. Once you have provided testimony, your hand will be lowered. Please do not raise your hand again. Only one opportunity to speak is provided. For those unable or not wanting to speak publicly, testimony may be provided via email at clerk@ltd.org. Public testimony is limited to 3 minutes per community member. A timer will be displayed on the screen and will beep when the 3 minutes is up. All right, I do have a couple of community members wishing to provide testimony. We're going to start with Rob Zako. Rob, give me just 1 moment to share my screen here, and then I'll give you the go-ahead to get started.
Thank you, Camille. Good afternoon.
And go right ahead.
Good afternoon.
Sorry, Rob, go right ahead.
Good afternoon, LTD board members and staff. This is Rob Zaka, of course, with Better Eugenesville Transportation. Thank you, Caitlin and Michelle, for your nice words. Thank you to Michelle and Susan for attending the rally to thank LTD bus drivers last week. We were really pleased with the event. We had about 75 people participate. Amazingly, the sky cleared up and we had blue skies. It was really a good event. And I just want to say that that was really a partnership of the community. We worked with the Amalgamated Transit Union bus drivers to organize that. And we had elected officials. Congressman DeFazio, of course, was in Orlando with some others for the APTA conference, but Dan Whalen came. Labor Commissioner Val Hoyle was not able to attend, but sent her greeting. Senator James Manning, Representative Julie Fahey, Mayor Lucy Vinnis, City Councilor Matt Keating, County Commissioner Lori Trieger, and many others spoke. And I just think that demonstrates the importance of transit to our community and the support that LTD, especially bus drivers, have from people who depend upon it and who people understand that others depend upon that. So we're really happy to put that event on, and thank you to LTD staff for working with us to open up that space at Rosa Parks Plaza. It was a great event. The only thing other thing I want to say today is I would also like to welcome the two new LTD board members, Gino Grimaldi and Pete Knox. It sounds like you're not quite official there. I don't know whether the Senate confirmed you earlier today or not, but it sounds like in a few days you'll be official. So welcome to the LTD board, and we look forward to working with you. Thank you all. That's all I have to say today.
Thank you, Rob. Next, we have Lucy Bambray. Lucy, whenever you are ready.
Thank you. Can you see and hear me?
We can hear you just fine. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. My name is Lucy Bambray, and I am a Southeast Neighbor Transportation Committee member. And first, we would like to welcome you to the two new board members to the board, and we look forward to interacting with you. My comments today are with respect to the Transit Tomorrow. Southeast Eugene has evolved. Excuse me a moment. I've lost my screen. Southeast Eugene has evolved with LTD and is now in its 50th year as a transit-dependent neighborhood. Our fixed bus routes serve low-income housing, transitional housing, supportive housing for people with disabilities, emergency housing for youth, elders, residential care, essential workers at all of these facilities, and many, many students. Since South Eugene is 90% residential, we all rely on the bus to access our daily needs. LTD is essential to us because Southeast is not, I repeat, not a highly walkable neighborhood. Our steep hills also make it unbikeable and unscooterable, particularly by elders and families that make up the biggest part of our population. As enthusiastic regular bus drivers, we were initially excited to learn of the plans for Transit Tomorrow. We participated in the surveys and said, sure, we would indeed like more frequent service. We were shocked to see the final plan. For most of our neighbors, LTD's public engagement on Transit Tomorrow consists of one neighborhood meeting announcing the elimination of all three of our neighborhood routes. We analyzed Transit Tomorrow in detail. We recommend 7 ways to improve public participation, increase ridership, and better meet our climate goals. One, we asked for individual notices on each of the bus stops that would be closed under Transit Tomorrow. 2, recognizing that eliminating neighborhood routes would initially increase car traffic, we asked for LTD's projected break-even point for net reduction of greenhouse gas emissions. We asked for regular data sharing to allow neighborhoods to confirm those target climate targets. We asked for equity for bus dependent people. We need our neighborhood buses to connect to the buses downtown and the corridors. 5, we offered a way to preserve neighborhood service at the same or lower cost using Amazon Station and other neighborhood stations. 6, we suggested scheduled time for the board to respond to public comments to allow for more two-way communication. We, with Rob Zako and BEST, recommended that LTD adopt the IAP2 public participation model. As part of public engagement, we hope that you will respond to these suggestions made over the past few years. Our suggestion today is that the board officially scrap, and I say scrap, Transit Tomorrow. The public engagement often failed to meet the requirements of even the lowest level of the IAP2 model, in other words, in form. We encourage the board to reboot this project and collaborate instead. Start with a plan based on Jess Roshak's Infinity Loop, which we sent earlier to the board, a high frequency network linking neighborhood hubs with continuous low frequency service to outlying areas. Thank you very much for your time, and we look forward to working with you.
Thank you, Lucy. Caitlin, I am not showing anyone else wishing they would like to provide testimony. So I will turn it back to you.
Thank you so much, Camille. So let's go ahead and move on to board member reports. We are right on time at 3:55. Who would like to share from any of the committee meetings over this past month? And Pete, that includes you if you want to share about the SPC meeting. now would be the time to do so. You don't have to, that's up to you. But anyone that's wanting to share with the board relevant information, this would be good.
I would like to mention one thing. There's been a correction made to the SBC notes from the last meeting. And that was that I think the last notes said that they elected a co-chair or a chair, and it was actually the vice chair. So that's been corrected.
Thanks so much, Mark. Okay, seeing no one that's interested in sharing. Oh, Don, sorry, go ahead.
Well, I was at the APTA conference where the Lane Act meeting was held, but there was a presentation on an upgrade of the Oregon transportation plan, which I'm sure anybody who wanted to access could get that. And then there was a report on the London Safety Corridor, which is a response to a lot of deaths on rural roads in Oregon, in Lane County, and another report on the area strategy. But like I said, I wasn't at that meeting, but these were significant reports at that time.
Thank you so much, Don. All right, anyone else before we move on? All right, perfect. Okay, so next up on our agenda is the consent calendar. Is there any discussion, anything on the consent calendar? And if there's no discussion, you're welcome to make a motion. Oh, Susan, go ahead.
I had a question, and I apologize if I blanked on this at a contractor budget meeting, but there was the new contract for no telecommunication, and it was for $567. Have we already discussed that, or did I just forget?
I do not attend contract committee meetings. Mark,
Yeah,
weigh in on that?
If it was on the consent calendar, then it was discussed with the contract committee.
Okay, then I guess I just forgot it because I don't remember that. So when we had the contract committee last, or I guess we didn't have one last time. There was one that was skipped. So, okay. So are we upgrading the system, or apologize if I missed that on our contract meeting?
Susan, I think that was at our last for October, I believe.
Okay. That's great. Thanks for the clarification.
Mm-hmm.
Any, Susan, did you have any more follow-up questions?
Yeah, and I can let you know on that one. I had to kind of look and see which one it was, and so we're upgrading our phone system, our communication system, so and primarily because of our call center, and we aren't able to do all we do from a regulatory standpoint with our call center, and so we are updating to a VoIP system that will help us meet our regulatory requirements.
Thank you. Then I can make a motion to approve the consent calendar.
Great, thank you so much. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. So motion made by Susan, second by Michelle. We'll do a roll call vote. Emily Secord.
I'm sorry, I'm hesitating and I hate to distract from the vote, but I don't remember this contract now that I'm thinking about it either. Because I think we talked about the Camp Creek electric lights, but I don't remember talking about the phone system, but we may have. So if we did, then aye.
Michelle, can you confirm it was talked about at the meeting?
I don't know for sure which meeting it was at. I mean, if there's some question about it, we probably should look that up and confirm it. But I kind of do recollect a conversation, or at least seeing it at the contract committee.
You're on mute, Emily.
Sorry, I just was looking back at September and October was Camp Creek, and I'm just looking back at September because I know we've talked about all kinds of different stuff, so I just want to make sure we have it dialed in.
Did you want me to continue calling for vote, Emily, or did you wish to poll or discuss more?
I just don't see it in September or October, so I'm a little bit anxious. Maybe is it possible to just pull that line from the consent calendar? Because otherwise it pulls the whole consent calendar.
No, we're getting
Camille,
there.
can you advise on that?
It is, let's see.
So that contract isn't actually on today's consent calendar. The only thing on today's consent calendar is the delegated authority report. So that contract is not there to pull from today's consent calendar.
I'm sorry, let me clarify. I guess I was just saying if we amend the delegated authority report to remove that line item, would that be acceptable, or do we have to remove the whole thing? Because that is, as you said, the only thing on there is that document.
So let me see if Wendy is on. She may be able to clear this up. Wendy is on, but you might have to pull her over, Camille.
Hi guys, I'm here. Thank you. This actually went July 21st to the board. It was approved on the 21st. It was our consent item number 10 for Noctel Communications. It actually, I think we were going to take this earlier in the year, but I don't think it was actually approved until July. July, yeah, yep.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for that, Wendy.
Yeah,
I knew you. I knew you'd know.
Yeah. Thank you.
Any more questions while we still have Wendy? Okay, I will go ahead and continue with the vote then. Susan Cox.
Approved.
Okay, Don Norton.
Aye.
And Michelle Weber.
Yes.
Okay, I also vote aye. Thank you. And thank you, Wendy, for hopping over, and Mark for getting that figured out. Appreciate that. It's always nice when we have questions, we can just pull them right over. Perfect. Okay, so we are going to go ahead and move on to our next agenda item, which is the board meeting schedule. Before I get started, I'm sure everyone read their packet. Does anyone have any questions about why this is an agenda item, or I'm also looking for feedback from board members. As we mentioned in the packet, there has not been conflicts during this trial period, but I'd love if board members have additional feedback. Also okay if you don't.
I'm flexible as long as we have something that's set and consistent. So for me, I'm fairly neutral on the time.
Thanks so much, Emily.
I think that one of the things to consider is what is sort of the protocol for other organizations. And when you look at the, I think Springfield and the Eugene 4J, the City Council, typically meetings are in the evening. And I think I'm able to get away during the day. I'm lucky to be able to have that schedule. I'm certainly, but I recognize that not everybody can, and that we need to make sure that this is at the convenience for the public. So I would be in favor of going back to the 5 o'clock.
Great. Gino, I see your hand up. Go ahead.
Sure. I'm also in favor of moving it to the later time. I think it's important that we do the public's business when the public can participate. I also want to be a little bit sensitive to equity, diversity, and inclusion issues. I think by doing it 3:30, I think we're shortchanging ourselves on those issues. Moving it to a later time that allows more people to participate is more inclusive and equitable.
Thank you for those comments. And just some historical background on why we talked about this. It was inclusion, diversity, and equity issues. Specifically, as you all know, with COVID, access to childcare has been a huge issue. Well, childcare closes at 5 or 5:30. And so it's not feasible for many working parents or anyone with children to be able to attend the later meeting times. So, you know, of course, we have a lot of different demographics that we have to think about here. And so that was part of that conversation where people were not able to find childcare to attend meetings. Additionally, those later times are when you are doing dinner and bath time and all that fun stuff as well. So that was part of our earlier conversation. And then a few different points, and board, please feel free to chime in on this. I believe we also talked about LTD staff having to work a full day and then stay for the evening as well. And then we thought with the hybrid option, being able to be virtual, even when we're back in person, that would allow for people to attend with whatever way was convenient to them. But yeah, you're right. We're never going to be able to please all people, right? But Pete, I see your hand up, and Dawn. So let's go with Pete and then Dawn.
Thank you. And I I'm going to say that I'm kind of in agreement with Susan and Gino here about that. And I understand that there are good, no matter which we do, there's somebody is going to lose here. But traditionally public meetings have been in the evening. And I think that people, when they think about when public meetings are, they're going to, they want to do that time slot. I myself am not married to either one of them, but this is the lens of who can we catch the most and what kind of follows the general guidelines of what other agencies are doing. I think this is the 5:30 time is a better fit.
Dawn, your hand is up.
Yeah, just personally, I find it doesn't interrupt my day as much as if I come in the evening. But we were experimenting at least one of the meetings with a hybrid system where, we can come physically to the meeting, but also encourage any other participation by Zoom or whatever that other mechanism was. I think LCOG has some system where, we can include others into the meeting and not be so dependent upon actually being physically present there. So we're still working that out. I think for my own personal preference, I would prefer the later date or the later hour.
How does the board feel about if some board members were in person and others were virtual? Please, Susan.
I'm on the LCC board, and we tried that, and it was not very effective. It was disjointed. It seemed like it'd be better if everyone in person or else Zoom. So.
And just to throw a wrench in all this, it doesn't have to be just the 3:30 to 5:30 or the 5:30 to 7:30. It can be any time that we propose that we feel like would work best for everyone involved. So you will see that there's different alternatives for when we make a motion. So if we're saying 4:30 or whatever, so keep in mind, also an option. Michelle.
So when we did have this conversation about doing this 3:30 on a trial basis, at that time, I did express that Wednesdays are a very difficult day for me and very full at work. So I've managed to make the 3:30 work, but it is a bit of a challenge for me. So just keeping kind of that in mind, I kind of would lean towards the later time slot too. And if there's a compromise in between the 3:30 and the 5:30, I would be open to that. Like maybe a, 4:30 or something that's, I don't know what that looks like, but just a little more, I might be the only one in the world that still has a work schedule that gets in my way.
No, you're not. There's lots of folks like that. Michelle, you're not alone. What other thoughts do folks have? And Mark and Camille also feel free to hop in on this conversation.
Yeah, and I would just say, the time is purely up to the board and what they think is best. But I would say just from a technological standpoint, that we would probably always leave the virtual option open to people. So, you know, even if they're out of town, they can join in. We are on Metro TV as well. And so, you know, we want people to participate. So I think to making sure that we can have that happen, even if they can't be present in person, is important. So, and the technology for that is getting better.
Camille, do you have anything that you wanted to weigh in on this, just from your perspective of as board clerk and kind of arranging all the behind the scenes stuff?
No, not really. I just will remind, like Mark just said, we are broadcasting live on channel 21 now for all of our public meetings through LCOG and Metro TV. They also have a live stream that I believe is used on YouTube. And with those two options, you can attend, but there is no public participation availability through either of those options. For public participation virtually, we do the Zoom webinar. And as you just seen in this meeting, I manage that. So when we do go back to in-person options, we will still maintain, as Mark said, all of those virtual options in addition to in-person. So we really are going to be set up to meet whatever the needs are for the board decision.
I just want to acknowledge, thank you so much. I think access is just so important. So thank you for making that low barrier for folks to participate. Feel free to if there's any more questions or opinions or anything you want to share. I think we just all have kind of our own, hey, what works best for our schedule, what works best for the public, what works best for participation, what works best for the staff. I do just want to point out, we also might want to be flexible in our work sessions moving forward if we do work with East Coast folks, so that they're not up at 10:30 at night presenting to us. So let's, so we also, you know, just have opportunities to be flexible in that way in the future. So it's a decision that all of us chime in on. This is meant to be a group decision. Doesn't mean we need to all agree, because we all have different situations. And Emily, I'd still love to, I know Emily feels really flexible. If you have more you have to say, I'd love to hear it. I would just say kind of my parting words are, you know, as part of founding the Eugene Young Professionals Group and civic involvement in Eugene, one of the big hurdles is times. You don't see, it's a generational thing. You're not seeing a certain generation at the city council meetings and sometimes at those other meetings. And there's a reason why. So I think as we talk about inclusivity and access, just keeping in mind just the needs of different folks, especially younger folks who often have young kids. And I'm not saying this just for myself because I have kids. I'm just want to say this as a broad voice to represent other young professionals. But please feel free, continue to chime in. If someone feels strongly and they want to make a motion, you're welcome to do that.
I think I heard consensus around people wanting to start later. Okay. Caitlin, I agree with you. I think that, you know, I think you said earlier, you know, anytime that we do is going to create barriers for someone else. And so I just want to be respectful that anything that we choose is going to create some challenges and maybe some opportunities as well. Maybe we split the difference on some of those alternatives that are listed on our board packet. And maybe we say a 4:30 start time or a 5 o'clock start time. And I don't think there's anything that says we have to have public comments first. We've just been doing that to be respectful of who we think are people that are participating in that. So maybe we have a 6 o'clock public meeting, public testimony option, and move that around on our agenda. So I'm flexible with whatever. I just want to make sure I heard what everybody else was saying.
Yeah, that's great, Emily. Thank you. Does anyone feel like they're interested in looking at something before 5:30, or no, still feeling like 5:30 is going to be that ideal start time? Yeah.
Understand, I really don't know what I'm talking about here, but one of the things that we might want to consider is if we're doing a work session item and there's really no vote being taken, and no public testimony being taken, I don't see any harm in starting those types of meetings earlier.
Absolutely. Yes, thank you. Especially as we embark on our GM search with people in different time zones. So great.
I'm ready to make a motion if you guys are adamantly opposed to a particular start time. I don't want to pick for us. So if anybody feels strongly, maybe you should make the motion.
That's perfect, Emily. It's a speak now or forever hold your peace.
Okay,
but
I'm
yeah,
gonna say 4:30 in just a second. So I'll give everybody just a second. All right, let's see. So I would like to make a motion to approve a meeting time of 4:30 to 6:30 or later as needed for the regular board meetings.
Thank you, Emily. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you so much, Michelle. All right, let's start with a roll call vote. We'll start with Michelle Weber.
Yes.
Thank you, Michelle and Emily.
Yes.
Thank you, Emily and Pete Knox.
Yes.
Thank you, Pete and Susan Cox.
Yes.
Thank you, Susan and Gino Grimaldi.
If I can vote on this, yes.
Oh
No,
gosh,
yeah,
sorry.
They are non-voters.
Oh, you guys you should have stopped me. I was just on a roll. I'm so sorry about that. Well,
I like
okay,
it.
so
But those are voices of agreement.
yes. So let me get to Dawn and then rectify this. Dawn, you were the last one for the vote.
Just for procedural things, I think after the second, we have more discussion if it was necessary. I don't know if we had any necessary more discussion or not, but we still can do that before I agree this and we can close this thing down. So
Let me make sure if I need to retract Pete's vote or Camille procedurally, what do I need to do since I just called on Pete and Gino and should have not done that. I'm so sorry.
I would recommend just allowing any more discussion and then just recall the vote.
Okay, so thank you for that. I got too excited. I was like, yes, there's 7 people. Okay. So Dawn, is there additional discussion?
no, I'll vote aye.
Okay, thanks, Dawn. So the recall would be, I'm gonna have everyone vote again and do this appropriately this time. I'm so sorry about that. Dawn?
Do I get to vote first now?
Yes.
Aye.
Okay, thank you, Dawn. Emily Secord.
Aye.
Thank you, Emily. Michelle Weber.
Aye.
Thanks, Michelle and Susan Cox.
Aye.
And then Caitlin Vargas also vote aye. Thank you. Sorry about that mistake, everybody. Okay, thank you for that discussion and for everyone weighing in. And we will be getting new calendar appointments from Camille, and obviously there'll be robust outreach to let the public know. And Emily, maybe we can follow up on your suggestion to see what public comment time works best. I don't know if it always has to be in the beginning, but I like your suggestion, and perhaps after this we can follow up on that because that would be a cool idea. Okay, so let's go ahead and keep zooming on. Thank you, everybody. So the next agenda item is the officer election for vice president. And just as a reminder to everyone, we have had this come up on our agenda 2 other times. And so what I thought would be relevant was I actually went back and watched our previous discussions about the vice president election, especially the one in September. And keeping that this is the 3rd one, we want things to roll smoothly. I thought it would be important to watch that. And so what I got out of that was Don spoke up and said that he thought it was going to be very important for our new board members to be able to vote in this vice president election. And in fact, he felt pretty strongly that we should wait for that. Michelle supported that and said she also wanted to wait for our new board members to vote in the vice president election. And then Susan also said it was also her preference that we should wait, and and she really felt strongly the decision should be made by the full board with 7 folks. So with that, I would like to give you guys the option to go ahead and postpone this vote, since we know that our full board is not able to vote tonight, since Gino and Pete are not able to vote just yet. So if there's a motion for anyone to postpone this agenda item, I'll take that. Oh, Michelle, sorry, you have your hand up.
In the spirit of bringing Gino and Pete into this conversation and having an opportunity to vote on that, I make a motion that we move this agenda item to a future agenda. And this will come up a little bit further down the road, but as part of that, I would like to recommend that we have a board conversation about this specific section of our bylaws and make sure that we really have a process that's nailed down and that we all feel comfortable with before we actually revisit nominations and voting.
Is there a second to Michelle's motion?
I'll second.
Okay,
And I appreciate your comments, Michelle. I agree fully.
great, thank you. I'll go ahead and do a roll call vote. So Dawn Norden. Oh, I'm sorry. Emily, go ahead.
I don't have anything to add. I just wanted to remind you to do discussion before the vote.
I know, sorry, I'm just getting so excited today. Yes, any discussion?
Well, am I muted? I'd like to concur with Michelle on that, rewriting that one section of the bylaws and, you know, just making our election process a little more clear and defined.
Thank you, Dawn. And as a reminder to the public, the Board of Directors does have an annual retreat set for December 1st, where a multitude of things are on the agenda, including discussions like this with the bylaws. So thank you so much. Any other discussion?
Call for the question.
What was that, Susan?
Said I call for the question, just the vote. Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Okay, great. So Michelle Weber.
Aye.
Thank you, Michelle. Susan Cox.
Aye.
Thank you, Susan. Emily Secord.
Aye.
Thanks, Emily. And Dawn Norden.
Aye.
Thank you, Dawn. And I also vote aye. Thank you so much. And thank you for bringing that up, Michelle. That's really appreciated. So we're going to go ahead and move on to our next agenda item. This is the supplemental budget adoption with Christina. Christina will be pulled over momentarily, and we are excited to see her. There she is. And Christina, we're so thrilled to see you. Since we do have 2 new board members, would you mind just letting them know your position and just kind of a quick recap of what you do at LTD? Oh, you're on mute.
All right, there we go. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our new board members. I'm Christina Hsu, and I'm the Director of Finance. And I cover all of the things related to budget, long-range financial plan, community investment plan, making sure that we cover all of the transaction processing for accounts payable, accounts receivable, grants, those types of things. I will today be covering and requesting your adoption of the supplemental budget for the Medicaid, specialized services, and general funds. And I want to start by sharing the process that brings us to our request today. Our fiscal year 2022 budget was adopted in May of 2021. And that budget represented our good faith estimate of our expected resources and expenditures for the year. And it was based on estimates using the best information that we had available at the time. The district continues always to monitor changes and trends that may affect or impact the adopted budget. And normally we bring potential risks to the board as part of our mid-year forecasts. But this year we did our assessment early to avoid doing a supplemental budget request in the spring when the board's going to be really busy with the general manager recruitment and the usual activities around the new fiscal year budget, the community investment plan, and the long-range financial plan. So what we have before you is our proposed supplemental budget, which increases the Medicaid fund expenditures by $250K and the specialized services fund expenditures by $1.5 million. And that is covered by a $1.5 million transfer from the general fund to the specialized services fund. And these changes were reviewed and approved in full by the budget committee at their October 6th meeting, which includes all of you and then also members of the public. And the board also welcomed public comment on these changes at their October 20 board meeting. And no public comments were received by either email or at the public comment opportunities at the October Budget Committee meeting or the board meetings. So I'm now here in this November board meeting to request your adoption of the supplemental budget changes that I just described and that are included in your packet and described in the AIS. And then once adopted, we will file the adopted supplemental budget with the state of Oregon, and we'll also post the changes to our website.
Dawn, you're unmuted. Do you have questions?
Oh, no, I'm sorry.
Oh, okay. Christina, feel free to call on folks if you'd like. I see Pete and Michelle have their hands up.
Sure. Hi, Michelle, do you have a question?
Yes, sorry, I need to make sure I'm actually unmuted. Not really a question. I read through it and I'm fine with all of the thoughts of what we need to do here. I did notice on page 17 of 291 of the board packet, in the total operating requirements line, it looks like we maybe need to make that 1,500,000.
Okay.
I think we just have a couple zeros missing there.
Okay.
Other than that, looks good.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you for pointing that out. We will make sure that we get that corrected. Thank you.
You bet. Thanks.
Pete, did you have a question?
Yeah. Couple things. Number one, on just a simple thing. It looks like on the top of page 18, the fiscal year on the almost second to last column, you got fiscal year 2021 or no, what is it? Wasn't that page? Oh, that was, I'm sorry, it was top of page yeah, top of page 18, you got fiscal year 2020 to 2021 amended rather than
22.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's a little thing. And then I just have a quick question so I understand this, the Medicaid Fund. According to the information we have from in the AIS, the Medicaid Fund is considered a neutral thing. So basically, if I understand this correctly, it's rides for people on Medicaid, and that covers all of the costs of the rides, or just the fare box revenue. So I understand what that is.
So we get reimbursed for the rides that are provided, and the thing is that it's those rides are reimbursed. It's not completely budget, and this is the request is completely budget neutral, but we also pay a administrative fee, which is on a per member per basis. So we actually there is that additional cost, but that is not part of the supplemental. So the supplemental budget piece is we are being reimbursed by Trillium and Pacific Source for the rides that we provide.
Okay, and that's at the fare box cost? Is it?
It's at the cost to provide the trips.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. I just wanted to understand.
Yeah, so there's no fare box for the NEMT. So for the Medicare, there's no fare box. It's already paid for. State pays for it through HA.
Okay, thank you, guys.
Any more questions for Christina? Okay, so Seeing none, if anyone wants to make a motion for adoption.
Anyone?
I don't have the numbers in front of me here. It's 2021-11-17 something. But I recommend approval of this motion.
Is that as proposed or as amended with just that minor couple of tweaks in the?
No, I just didn't have this document in front of me, so I can remember what the thing should be, but I can't remember exactly what the numbers are.
Yeah, that's okay, Don. I was just
read it off. They can do it.
Yeah, that's okay. I was just wondering if it needs to be as proposed or as with those amendments, just a couple of small items that we asked for changes to.
Those are just typo sort of things. Do we need to change the budget at all for that?
I'm just asking to make sure that, we make the motion the way we need to make the motion.
Mark and Camille, does it need to be as presented or amended?
Amended. I think the typos are some pretty important zeros.
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead and adopt it, and we'll amend it. And so adopt it as amended, as mentioned, and we'll fix it.
That's a great catch, Michelle. Thank you.
So I'm just going to read the whole motion then, so we are clear as to what we
sounds good
moving forward here. I move adoption of LTD resolution number 2021-11-17-058. It is hereby resolved that the LTD Board of Directors adopts the 2021-2022 supplemental budget as amended.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Susan. And that proposed motion was found on page 14. Is there any discussion? All right, let's go ahead and move to a vote. Emily Secord.
Aye.
Don Norden.
Aye.
Susan Cox.
Aye.
Michelle Weber.
Aye.
I also vote aye. So that passes unanimously. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you, Christina. We appreciate your time.
Thank you very much.
All right, great. So we are doing great on time. So our next agenda item today is the updated board travel and expense reimbursement policy. So Andrea, so nice to see you. We're so glad you could join us this afternoon. And so I will let you handle this agenda item, and thank you again.
Thank you for having me, and welcome to the new board members. Gino, it's great to see you. So this updated policy was done to comply with the amendment to House Bill 2992, or the amendment made to the statute by that House bill that became effective September 25th of 2021. There are Camille, are we going to vote to adopt this today, or is this just for discussion?
We are voting to adopt unless the board chooses to postpone adoption.
Okay, so we're voting to adopt. I would be happy to answer any questions about any of the provisions or the changes that have been made to the old policy. There are several changes that will have an impact on the board members directly, personally, because what the legislature has done is, while calling it a per diem, they have voted to compensate public board members for their time spent in the furtherance of board duties. And the purpose of doing this is to make the ability to serve on public boards more inclusive to those that do have to work for a living and don't have the time off, the paid time off to serve on a board. So it is, the statute itself is an optional payment to other than those who qualify as qualified board members. And to qualify for this payment, this mandatory payment, you meet certain income thresholds to be below that for yourself, or if you're married, for your family. And it's $50,000 or $100,000. So those board members who meet that threshold, the payment is mandatory. So anytime that there is board action taken in a day, attending a board meeting, attending a work session, responding to emails, then you are entitled to the compensation, which is $151 per day right now. There is an option in the statute to pay all board members, regardless of whether or not you meet that threshold, for the daily per diem compensation for days that they work in furtherance of board activity. Now, in discussion with Mark, the decision was made to make the proposed LTD policy to make the payment applicable to all board members. And this was done after much thought, because it is, of course, more money that would be going out. But it was done for the purpose of making this an equitable policy, so there we are not making a distinction between board members who make a certain amount of money and board members who don't. So this way we don't have to put your finances into the public's, for public view. And it just seems more equitable, more fair, but it is the board's decision whether or not this is the policy that you would like to go with. It can be an optional payment for those above that certain amount of money. If you go that direction, then each of you would have to fill out the state mandated form that discloses your income for the prior year and fill it out each year. Now, that being said, with the payment to those who qualify being mandatory, any board member can make the decision to forego the compensation. So it can be waived. The decision to waive does not have to be a public decision. So that's a personal decision that you could make just with Camille. So those are the reasons for the changes in the policy. And then some of the other language has just been cleaned up to make it hopefully more understandable. But if it wasn't, again, happy to answer questions.
Thanks for that overview, Andrea. And we can jump into questions. So when you say our income would be public records, is that something that's posted? Is that something that's requested? And this is just for those that have to fill out the appropriate information. Can you talk a little bit more about what the access to those income records?
I can, and this is a new process, so it could be tested. So what I'm saying is not gospel at the moment, but how it has been laid out in the notes by the legislature instructing on how to implement this policy is there will be a state, a template form that all of you will have to fill out that certifies your income from the last year. I believe it allows for requested supporting documentation, but it doesn't require it. And that becomes a public document. There's no requirement that it be posted on LTD's website, but it would be subject to a public records request. Whether or not all of the information would be disclosed is something I haven't looked at. There may be privacy redactions that are possible, but because the purpose of the form is to determine who qualifies for this payment, the actual financial information would be discoverable. So that much information could be requested by the public. Does that answer your question?
Thank you. Yeah, thank you. I was just kind of curious on what that looked like. You know, I would just say, and I'm going to go with Susan and then Dawn. This is pretty cool to see this because I know I briefly mentioned earlier about just equity and bringing in different demographics into civic leadership and public service. So it's nice to see some forward movement that encourages people from across different communities to participate and help support them participating. So that's cool. So thanks for this. So Susan, go ahead.
I guess I have some questions. First of all, and it sounds like, Andrew, we don't really know the breadth of the public knowledge that people would have if you filled out the financial. So I guess I I think that if it's protected information, that someone who has to prove, I guess, that they're a qualified member. I think that obviously that's important. And I think the spirit of this, which will provide equity, that financial considerations are not a barrier to someone in public service. I think that the spirit of that intent, I think, is really good. Can you clarify when you said that that this would cover board meetings, it would cover committee meetings, it would cover if we do emails? That's like every day.
Yeah, and like I said, this policy has not, or this law has not been tried yet in the court, or even questioned or reviewed. So the language of the statute says any day that board activities are undertaken. And there was a Q&A that was published, and I think that may have come along with your board packet, that covers this, that says any action taken in furtherance of board duties would qualify you for per diem compensation that day. Now, I think additional policies or just internal guidelines would be a good idea to implement after, or if this policy is adopted, kind of setting forth what we think the standard should be for when enough is enough. But right now there are no hard and fast rules on when enough is enough. So I think that probably would be left to the discretion of LTD board at this point to put that into writing of what you guys believe is enough.
I guess I feel like there needs to be a balance. On one hand, you don't want to prevent someone who couldn't participate because of financial obligations or whatever. But I also feel like part of the commitment to this is public service. And it also shouldn't be necessarily a benefit that they're, so, I mean, if we're talking about what, $150 and every day that there's some involvement, I'd be very curious to know over the course of a year, how much money would that be? I mean, when you consider what do our drivers make, what do staff make, this seems like I'm troubled by this, to be honest with you. I think the spirit of it is good, but I think it's like other policies, sometimes they sound really good on paper, but when you go to really, poor Camille, I'm trying to imagine her having to manage all this. So I'd like there to be a lot more discussion and better understanding of this. And I certainly would not be in favor of it being retroactive. That's just, but I think that we need to get some more clarification from my perspective.
Can you, Susan, elaborate why you would not want it to be retroactive to the end of September?
Well, for one thing, I think there are budget implications to it. I don't see any reason for it to be retroactive. If this is something that we're doing, we're making a motion or we approve something and it goes forward, I think retroactive is pretty unusual. I mean, from, I don't know who it would affect or what it would affect, but I'd like to see what's the budget implication. And just my view, I don't think it would need to be retroactive. I know it's not that far, but to me, it seems like it should be a forward-looking policy, not going backwards.
Can I just clarify one thing? And I completely understand those concerns. But this is the law, and it's mandatory with respect to the qualified members.
Great,
so
I understand. Yeah.
Right. So there's really no decision to be made for retroactivity for those members. There's a decision to be made on retroactivity if you decide to make it applicable to all board members. You certainly could decline retroactivity to the ones who aren't mandated by law to receive this compensation. But to those who are mandated by law to receive it, it is owed to them at this point.
Proactively? I didn't understand that part of it, but okay, thanks for the clarification.
And Andrea, is that only if we adopt, wait, can you clarify that one more time? Sorry. That's only if we adopt it, or no, regardless of our decision today, qualified members get retroactive to September 25th?
The law went into effect July 25th. So as of that day, all qualified board members were entitled to per diem compensation.
Okay. My fault. I read that wrong. Okay, Dawn, do you want to go?
Yes, I'm concerned about, do we make a request, or is this something that, okay, every board member would get the same amount for their service during this period if they chose to be, or if the board in general chose to be either qualified or generally for the board? Or does then each member have to make an application? That, going back to what Susan said, that'd be a nightmare for Camille. If we were all handled together, then it would, be the same amount distributed. But if we're all applying for different, and then we attend different, different committee meetings, and some committees require a lot more time than others, and that's a lot to think about right now about how we administer this.
Emily or Michelle, thoughts?
I think there's a little bit more to digest here too. Just doing a rough calculation, assuming that we check our email 7 times a day, and that's a qualifier, we're looking at about $385,000 a year to pay that. And I guess it's just, I think part of the discussion is,
it's not per activity, it's per day.
Yeah,
right. I know, but if we check our emails every day, I guess what's the qualifier there for emails?
And I think that's why Andrea was suggesting, right, that internally we create some policies around the activities. Is that what I heard?
It is, and I have to assume that there will be some guidance coming out from the legislature on this, on how to, for one, keep track of the time and submit it for payment, and 2, what would actually qualify as engaging in board activity.
So what are we required to do right now as part of this legislative adoption? What are we today required to do, and what do we have an opportunity to wait for that for further guidance to come through, and then respond to that when we have it?
You're not required to do anything today. You're not required to make a decision on this policy. This could be something that perhaps we discuss more at the retreat, and maybe by then I can look to see if has been additional guidance published for us to talk about how to implement this.
Yeah, I guess I don't want to necessarily make a decision today on something that we would be revisiting in a month or 2. If we can just wait and have that conversation when we have better information.
Sorry, Susan, go ahead.
I was just going to say, Andrew, I think there's going to be more guidance coming down, but also seems like it'd be prudent to find out how's this being interpreted across the board. I mean, if it's not just happening to LTD, so as a matter of practice, what are other organizations around the state doing, or around the county?
I will gather that information to have for us at the retreat.
Thanks.
Pete, I just wanted to know if you had any feedback.
It's being new on the board, I don't even know exactly how much time commitment this is really going to be, but I do agree that to have it just be every single thing you do, I mean, you could take a breath and claim that it's a board activity. I mean, I do think there's absolutely got to be some limiting, things, because you're talking about. I think I was doing the same calculations that Michelle was doing, and I was just going, you know, like a city councilor who's not under this rule makes something, gets about 10,000 a year. We'd be getting like, well, about 45, you know, or 50. So, you know, it seems really outlandish, really. But so there has to be some kind of things to limit it.
That's great. Gino, did you have any thoughts on this?
Sure. You know, I think the intent of the legislation is good. It's addressing a problem that's real and tangible. However, the details are murky. And until those details get clarified, I would just limit our activity to what we have to do, and that's meeting the law and following the law. A future discussion would be great once things get sorted out.
Yeah, and I think the only hazard to that is that we will still have to pay retroactively for board member activity back to September 25th. That's
so just keep in mind, everyone, we could also, because I know folks are feeling uncomfortable about the larger numbers if we were all entitled to this. There's also the option under the motions to do this for just qualified board members. And maybe, I don't know, Andrea, if you know, there's even something we want to say today that, however we want to make the motion, but are we allowed to modify this in the future? Or if hypothetically, if we made a decision today, can we change it, or no, like this is what we passed?
Of course, yes, you can change your resolutions anytime in the future. You can make a motion today to, you know, start making the payments to qualified board members, or to at least get the process going, to, you know, submit the information to certify who's qualified. Or you can just not do anything and understand that the law is what it is. And when you do decide to move forward with whatever the policy is, that hopefully everyone has kept records going back to the 25th of their time. And those payments will have to be made to whoever it is, well, to the qualified members, at least from that date.
Thank you for that clarity. Yeah, this is an interesting conversation because we're all humans here, right? We all have our real lives outside of our LTD lives. And so it's, you know, we got to be considerate and be conscious of how these things are intersecting right now. But Dawn, your hand's up, and then Susan.
Well, I guess it's just kind of confusing because, you know, reading a board package, you know, for 291 pages of a board package, some people are going to read that faster than others. And I don't know, you know, we're so accustomed to assigning our value to the time that we put in or some other productivity measure. And here we're not, you know, it's like Susan was saying either, it's a public service and we're not doing this because of the time commitment or the monetary value that we get. And yet I remember going through this before, that it was costing me, you know, $300 a year to participate in the meetings, just the transportation costs. So that kind of drove that last board compensation package. And now I'm thinking of, okay, if I went to this convention, well, I got a per diem for going and a flight and the hotel, you know, the cost of that. Does that cover the whole thing? Do I go back and cover, you know, count these hours? This is a very difficult thing for me to understand how I would apply for payment here. I wouldn't want to apply. I want it to just be kind of uniform. So say that okay, so all of the board members get the same thing and not try to decide about, well, how much are we participating or not? Because obviously some participate more than others.
Don, that's a great point. And I would say the way I looked at that was lost income. So we were gone for 4 days, which means we were not able to work for 4 days. And so that's if you are self-employed or you don't have enough PTO or your work, whatever your work situation is, that's lost income. So you're saying, okay, that was 4 days that I didn't get income. And so I'm going to be short $300 for my electricity bill or my mortgage or whatever. And so that's kind of one way to look at it, not necessarily, hey, is this a benefit to doing activities? It's more of like, if I take time away from my employment or my income to do public service, what is going to happen to me and my stability, right? If I don't make up that income. And so I see it leveling the playing field in that way. And that would be my response to how it applies to you with Florida, is that instead of working for 4 days, you put yourself in an opportunity to help LTD advance and help the board and help the community and help the agency. But that might put you in a bad spot because you just missed 4 days of income. And that's, and I'd be honest with you guys, this is weird because we're all here kind of talking about our personal lives and our income, right? But, that's how it would affect me, is instead of losing out on 4 days worth of work, I would be able to get more groceries for my kids. That's real life, right?
I guess one of the things that because this has just happened, when I think about the request to serve on the LTD board and what are the obligations, what are the commitments, and do you agree to do this? Is this something that you feel that is you can do within your life, all those other things. So I think all of us came on to the board under that understanding. So I think, Don, what you were talking about with regard to reimbursement of expenses, actual expenses, I think that's reasonable. I think that's something that certainly could be considered, and we have to keep track of it, but that seems like a reasonable thing. So I think my preference is that we table this until we have more real concrete information, because otherwise we can just go down a real rabbit hole and not have what we need to make a good decision.
The legislative guidance on a couple of questions that have come up right now. So the first is, what constitutes actual performance of duties? So that's what the triggering is for the payment. And the legislative guidance is attending a meeting of the board or commission or performance of tasks necessary to fulfill the responsibilities of the board member to their appointed board or commission. So it's attending a meeting or fulfilling a task that is relational to your appointment. And then the second issue is, if their meetings vary in length, should the per diem compensation be paid regardless of the meeting length? So if you did one email, if you went to a short meeting, do you get paid less? Do you not? The answer is, ORS Chapter 292 provides that the flat statutory per diem compensation amount is to be paid for each day or portion thereof during which the member is actually engaged in the performance of official duties. So it's a mandatory payment. It's not something that we can opt out of for qualifying members at a minimum when you attend a board meeting.
I just want to make sure, since Emily hasn't had a chance to talk. Emily, are you there? Did you have any questions or have any input?
Yeah, I think I'm kind of arriving where everybody else is. I think I need more information. A couple of my questions are, depending on which way we go, if there's a
Did she cut out for everyone else?
Yes, I don't hear Emily.
Emily, we can't hear you, unfortunately.
Caitlin, while Emily's trying to find out where she is, would it make some sense, because this is mandatory, would it make sense to begin to look at what are the budget implications are for this and kind of be ready for that? Because we have to pay for it and it's not in the budget now, certainly it's going to have to reflect that.
If, yeah, I think here's what I can do. I can look at all of the meetings, just meetings, not emails, just the meetings that all board members have attended since this came into practice. And then we can estimate, you know, going forward, how much that would result if we paid it to all board members. So, and we can bring that to our next meeting or our retreat if that's what we want to talk to it about it, and see how we want to move forward.
I'm hearing from multiple people that maybe that would be a good idea, Mark, just some projections. Does that sound right to everybody? And then are there any and then I think maybe it was Susan that asked if there are examples of other agencies that have already implemented this and how's it going for them? What's their process? Since it has been, you know, almost 2 months since it was passed.
Yeah, and I can check with some of our public partners, and I think just applies to it doesn't apply like city council, it just applies to state entities, right, Andrea?
That's correct, state boards.
Yeah, yeah. So other transit entities would be included. So I can check with them, see how they're handling it. My guess is they're behind as well.
Okay. What else? So Andrea, are you available to work with Mark? Because I'm guessing the board is going to ask to postpone this. Are you available to work with Mark to provide those additional documents so we can come back and have a secondary conversation? And then this gives the time to the board members to do some additional research and get whatever other questions they have ready for our secondary conversation.
Yes.
Yeah, and if things come up, you can certainly email without payment, of course, to us, and you know, we can kind of revise the policy, you know, based on your input too. So when we come back, at least we have something that you guys kind of discussed. But it sounds like, you know, as we move forward, the opt-out option for people who don't qualify is something they want to kind of keep on the table. So if people don't want the payment, you know, they can say, no, I'm good. And so that sounds like something you still want in the policies.
So I definitely encourage board members to also think about your own personal options in this, if this is something that you would want to opt out of. As we go into the next conversation so that we can, I would say, have a fruitful conversation and make sure we are making a decision next time so we don't just keep prolonging this, so we can be in compliance. But this is, in the meantime, I'm sure if you have additional questions or questions that come up, Andrea, is that okay if folks contact you if questions come up in the meantime?
Yes.
Send them to Camille probably,
Camille.
or me, okay. And let us vet them first.
Sounds good.
And just to kind of reiterate the issue of you know, opting out and you know, making sure that that's something you want to see in the policy, yeah, so.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so someone will need to make a motion to pull this agenda item, and then we will put it. Mark, can you clarify, are we looking at revisiting this at a work session, at our board retreat, or next board meeting?
Yeah, we'll have to see. The agenda is getting pretty full, and for the retreat, I don't know if we want to do it there. It may be the next board meeting.
Okay.
And
Sounds
so, but yeah, I'll let you know. And yeah, so we should be fine.
Okay, so maybe in the motion, we're saying at a later date.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
And I don't know that this even needs a motion. I mean, you don't have to just move on to the next agenda item.
Oh, okay. I will do that then. Andrea, thanks for taking the time to explain this to us and answer questions, and for being here tonight. We really appreciate your time.
You bet.
Okay, great. All right. And Emily, I'm not sure if you heard that, but we will revisit this at another time. Okay, so let's go ahead and move on in our agenda. So, oh wait, Andrea, you get to stay. You're not going anywhere. Great. Okay.
You're ushering me out too early.
No, no, not at all. I just wanted to reintroduce you with more gusto.
Oh, thank you.
So back over to Andrea for the draft amended and restated board bylaws.
Okay, so I believe everyone has had a chance to look at these a couple of times now. And then I'm just here to hear what modifications or changes we want that we're agreed on, or to discuss ones that we're not quite sure about yet, or to clarify what something's supposed to mean if it is not as clear as it should be. And again, these are your bylaws, so it's up to you guys how you want them to read. This is just, in the prior bylaws, if something was not explained or included that should be in bylaws, then I have used my best judgment to put in here what I think would work best for this board. But I don't know your thoughts. So we're not bound to any of this. You can change them. You will not hurt my feelings. So that's all that I'm listening for today. And I don't think there's a vote on these today. I think we're coming back after revisions have been made.
Feel free to call on people, Andrea.
Okay. Susan?
Sorry, I don't have it. I guess I have a question before we even get to the actual substance of the bylaws themselves. How it was that, I don't ever remember a time that we had a motion that we're going to redo the bylaws. And certainly a lot of effort and time have got into this. But I think I remember at one point saying, from my perspective, bylaws are an institutional document that need to really be carefully considered before you start making changes. And what is the reason for it? What's the objective? What is it you're trying to fix? And from my perspective, I don't know that we've ever had that conversation. So to me, that's important before we go to actually line by line looking at the bylaws themselves. Maybe I'm the only one that feels that way, but
No, that's completely understandable. And I may not have the history on that. In an early discussion with Camille, she was working on the revision, and then we just partnered up to do the work together. So Camille may have a more complete answer for you on that.
And Camille and Mark, feel free to chime in, but Susan, it was requested by the board to do the bylaw division revision.
Was that at a board meeting? Because I guess I don't remember that.
I think this was.
I remember we had a conversation about it.
Yeah, and I can help a little bit, but it's fairly routine for us to update our policies and including board bylaws as things change. And so, and if we see things in bylaws that say, that's not really what the way we do it anymore, or things have changed, we need to take a look at that, or we need, it'd really be helpful to update the formatting, if nothing else. That's what we do, and we bring it to the board, and again, and for board approval. I mean, if the board says, no, I like the old bylaws, we're just going to keep them, great, then we'll just quit doing anything and we can move on. Although, we have to be in compliance and make sure that, that things work for the board. So.
Emily, I don't know if you're here. You might want to shed some color on this. In an email to the whole board in September, Emily specifically requested bylaw review and revision. So I know you're driving, Emily, so you don't need to say anything, but I just, if you wish to, maybe feel free to share some color.
Sure. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, good. Just really briefly, this was requested as an ad hoc committee by the board members to address some of the concerns that have already been mentioned, such as our voting and roles. So I don't think it's something we need to, have urgent and do right now, but I'd really like to suggest that ad hoc committee again, because I have a lot of suggestions and edits that I'd like to see at least considered before we adopt any new bylaws at this time.
It was a ad hoc committee. Which one was that?
Well, I think that would be a more productive way to do this than to have us all sit here and talk about language and wordsmithing. So I'm a little disappointed that we had this kind of bypass the board completely and go to legal counsel before the board's really gotten a chance to weigh in. So that would be my request, is that an ad hoc be assigned to discuss this a little bit more in depth and then bring it back for further discussion.
Okay. Got it. Sorry, I thought you had said that's where it came from. So yes, following the trail, and just to circle back, Susan, you did reply to the email, Emily's email, saying that you support Emily's request for the bylaw review and revision. So
but that was an ad hoc committee. It was a review, and to me it was like kind of a review of why are we doing this, what's the purpose, what's the intent, what's broken, what are we trying to fix from my perspective. So that's why I'm sorry if I sound confused about not understand that we had done this collectively as a board, agreed this is something that we need to do.
Okay, I don't see that in the communication piece. And so I think that's why it did go directly to Camille, who historically has created the bylaws, and then she worked with Andrea on that, because I don't think the ad hoc committee might have been in that communication. Mark, Camille, I don't want to speak for you. So if I missed that somewhere, please let me know.
Yeah, and I mean, and now it's really up to the board if they want to create an ad hoc committee to look at the bylaws, recommend changes. I mean, ultimately, it's got to go to our attorney for legal review. We can't just put things in our bylaws that either don't make sense or aren't legal. So it's really up to the board. If you want to create an ad hoc committee to review bylaws, then certainly the board chair has the ability to appoint people to that ad hoc committee.
And Mark, can you clarify, would it have to be the board chair that would create the committee and appoint folks, or is this if the board as a majority wanted to do this? Can you just kind of clarify what that responsibility looks like?
Yeah, I mean, it really is up to the board chair to appoint, committee members to ad hoc committees. And so, I mean, unless you want to delegate that to the rest of the board and take a vote on who's on the committee, but
Sorry, I was asking about the creation of the committee, like establishing an ad hoc. Is that something that the majority of the board can do, or does the board president have to make that determination if that ad hoc committee is created?
Is it possible for board members who are interested to just let you know that they would be happy to participate, and then you can, if no one volunteers, then you have to appoint, but if people are agreeable, then that would be a way to do it.
Camille might be able to weigh in. She's been managing most of the other ad hoc committees. And so, Camille, how have they been kind of put in place?
So historically, the board president creates the committee, and it has gone all of the ways that have been mentioned, actually. So it is completely fine for the board president to create the ad hoc committee, appoint board members. It is also completely fine for board members to say, I would really like to be on that committee, and for the board president to just approve the interested parties.
Michelle and Dawn, I do see your hands up. So Michelle, why don't you go first, and then we'll hear from Dawn.
Okay. So I do think that we need to at least spend some time reviewing and updating specific areas. As mentioned earlier, the voting process is seriously lacking in detail. And I think it's been a hurdle for us to get through appointing a vice president because of that hurdle. And I have some concerns about the discomfort that that's creating for board members and allowing us to move forward. And I'm sure there are some other places in there. I've seen a lot of places where clarifications have been made that are very helpful. So I would like to see us do that, but I would say that if that's getting in the way of us appointing a vice president or any other officers in the future, that we need to deal with that sooner than later. So we would want this committee to get moving pretty quickly.
Dawn.
Well, I'm principally concerned about the Section 3 article on officers and Section 3.1 on elections. Otherwise, I looked through I had a copy of the 2017 bylaws, and I can see why, after 5 years, we want to kind of adjust things and clear up the language and clarify things here and there. I don't think this suggestion in Article 3 on Section 1 did the job for the earlier iteration of the bylaws. So that section I'm concerned about, and I think it would require some discussion among the board, and perhaps an ad hoc committee could drill down and get closer to the desired result. But otherwise, I feel like, the bylaws look pretty good to me.
Andrea, you're on mute.
I just wanted to ask Dawn, because I heard this a couple of times about a concern with 3.1. Can you clarify what the concern is?
Well, I've been struggling with that myself, trying to see, well, how would I change it? What language do I want? And in the first iteration, I thought, well, okay, I could just insert a clause in there and say the vote would be done according to, we could say preference voting or star voting or something, and then have that defined in the glossary so that it would only be in one place. But what I feel uncomfortable about is the way it says the members of the board shall elect their officers. And there's no particular structure by which that happens, except it says it should be a voice vote. It
says there's nominations and the nominated people speak, and then there's a vote.
Yeah, but then after there's a vote, then there's another one and another one. And it just seemed awkward. In the last 3 times, we had board officers elected, it was awkward and things didn't go. And the time before that, well, that just swept right through because, it happened so quickly that nobody had a chance to think about it. And I've been on other boards and I've seen the same dynamic. And I feel like we're missing a part of our democracy, a way that any citizen can involve themselves in a public body or even a private foundation or whatever. And the way we vote officers, it should be defined in a way that everyone understands how it happened, rather than having it just kind of happen and you look around and say, well, how did that happen? But I think we could do that by I would use a preference voting style where everybody could vote their preference, and then we just tally it up at the end. And I've worked with other boards that have done this, and it seems successful to me. So I'm suggesting something like that here, but I don't have the specific wording for it.
Okay, thank you. That's helpful.
So in the interest of time, I think everyone had some really great feedback today and really good discussion. So Susan and Gino, I will get to you. I just kind of let things roll on a little longer, just because I think we're having some really good discussions today. So I just want to pause and ask Mark, for either Tiffany or Teresa, are either of those presentations able to be moved to our next board meeting or work session, so that we are not staying too late tonight? What are your thoughts? You're on mute, Mark. Oh, there you go.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, you know, it's up to the board. I think they're just both for information only. Tiffany was going to give some just an update on legislative stuff. That can wait till next month. That's fine.
Does this board feel okay with moving Tiffany's presentation to either a work session or our next board meeting so that we can finish this conversation? Just kind of head nods or head shakes? Yes, head nods. Okay. So Tiffany, I know you're there. Thanks for being patient with us. We just want to make sure we're getting everything we can out of this conversation. And what we'll do is go ahead and move that presentation to our next board meeting. So do you know how about, oh, sorry.
And they can both wait. So yeah.
Okay.
You know, if you want to finish it up with this, that's fine.
Sure. So we'll do Gino and then Susan.
Thank you. I'll be real quick and just want to make the point that I'm really concerned and actually opposed to having the general manager cast the deciding vote when there's a tie in the election for officers. And later on, I can go into why, but I just want people to know that.
And Gino, you did have a chance to review the bylaws and you sent in your feedback. I'd love to hear your opinion. How are you feeling about doing an ad hoc committee, or what do you think some good next steps are?
You know, I think these are important enough that an ad hoc committee can work, but in reality, everybody on the board is going to want to have detailed input into these bylaws.
Susan, go ahead.
Gino, you make a good point, but I was just going to suggest that we have an ad hoc committee of the board that can meet and spend some time on this, maybe have some recommendations for the meeting in December. And I would be happy to serve on that group.
And Andrea, is this something that since you're doing the administrative work, would you and Camille need to attend this, or can you give me some good ideas about, no, it's just board members and they come back to you with suggestions? What does that look like?
I think the ad hoc committees, or the whole board, however you want to do it, should meet and discuss the policy changes that they want. And Camille and I can wordsmith it to put that into the bylaws. But we don't need to be involved in the actual, unless Camille wants to be. I don't need to be involved in the actual discussion of how you want your bylaws to look, unless there's a question on, is this legal, or how have other boards done this before that I could help with?
Okay. Camille, do you have anything you want to say?
No, not at this time.
Okay. Pete, any thoughts? I know we're throwing you in the fire, but any thoughts about this next steps for bylaws?
Yeah, everything that's been already said here has been pretty important. The election of the officers and some of the mechanisms around that. It doesn't seem that clear. I agree with Gino that it does belong to all of the board, but also it's cumbersome to go through such a large document with everybody in a really short amount of time with a board meeting, which is only 2 hours and technically. So I do think that an ad hoc committee can bring some real recommendations to the board, and then you can have a larger board discussion. I just think the reality is that just considering time, you got to find a way to do that work.
Thank you for that. Michelle?
So before we make a decision on ad hoc committee or full board discussion, how many of us would want to serve on that committee? Show of hands, just because I think it'll help make that decision a little easier.
I know, yeah, I was gonna say, I know Emily's raising her hand.
Yeah, and so I know Susan and I both have interest.
It'd have to be less than a quorum, though. Of course, for now we have 7 members, or quorum would be, that'd still be 3.
So.
Right, so I think determining how many have interest in doing that is part of this decision. Otherwise, Caitlin, I think it falls on you to decide who those committee members will be.
Looks like
so. This will be a public meeting regardless, so it's okay to have a quorum of the board.
Would it make sense then to just set aside a meeting where this is going to be the subject and the topic, and it's an adequate amount of time for us to really work through this?
My suggestion is, if you really want to spend time on this, a ad hoc committee with fewer members is probably the only way it's going to get done.
Yeah, I agree with Mark about the ad hoc. I'm also thinking just historically. So most of you know, when I first started, there was an HR committee that did the GM evaluation and decided how the GM was doing and raise and bonus and all that fun stuff. And it just wasn't the right fit for 3 people. It really was a whole board conversation. So we did end up terminating that committee so that the whole board was part of that decision. So I am pretty torn because I really agree with Gino that this is a whole board responsibility, not just decision. But I also know how long and drawn out this could potentially be when you have 7 people providing input versus 3. So I'm really looking at you guys to make this decision and decide if you want to do the ad hoc, if you want this to be full board responsibility. We are at the end of our time today. Graciously, both presentations have been moved to next time, but I'm just going to do a quick kind of round robin. And I'd love if you just said in 2 sentences, yes, for ad hoc, and yes, I want to be on it, or no, I don't want to be on it, or this needs to be full board. So I'm going to start with Dawn.
Oh, whoops, pushed the wrong button. I'm thinking yes for ad hoc, and no, I don't want to be on that committee. I'd just like to see it done, but you know, those who are really interested in scoping it out, I'd prefer they worked on that first.
Okay, got it. Thank you, Dawn. Let's go with Michelle.
Yes, I am supportive of ad hoc, understanding that we'll probably have a much bigger discussion with the full board, and I would want to serve on that committee.
Thank you, Michelle. Susan.
I support the idea of ad hoc, and I do want to be on the ad hoc committee. I don't know transportation, but I do know this kind of stuff. It is in my wheelhouse. So,
Emily, are you able to talk right now?
I think so, if you guys can hear me. And
Yes.
I apologize, I've got a family thing I have to be in Salem in. So yes, knowing that the ad hoc would report back to the board for further feedback and discussion, I'm for the ad hoc and I would love to serve on it if you all would have me.
Okay, great, thank you. Gino.
I'm fine with the ad hoc, and I'm fine with letting those who have more experience be on that committee.
Okay, thank you. And then Pete.
I'm going to reflect exactly what Gino just said, and I think that we've got some good talent already working on it.
Great, thank you so much for that, everyone. So it looks like we're all in agreement of the ad hoc. And then we've had 3 gracious volunteers who are total rock stars in this area. So thank you so much for stepping up, because it's not easy work, but we really appreciate the impact this is going to bring. And so Michelle, Susan, and Emily will be serving on the ad hoc bylaw revision committee. Doesn't need to be called that. That just came out of my mouth right now. And thank you for seriously for offering to do that. That's amazing. We appreciate the time commitment and your expertise. So any last words before I go ahead and adjourn our meeting? And board members, please remember we had two staff presentations we had to push off. And thank you, Tiffany, and thank you, Teresa Brand, for letting us have these conversations today and being flexible. Okay, Gino, go for it.
Just, is it okay if those of us who are not on the ad hoc committee give any concerns we have about the current bylaws as they're drafted to the staff so they can transmit that to the committee?
Yeah, absolutely. I forward anything you have to Camille, and we'll make sure that they go to the committee meetings. And Camille and I will attend the ad hoc committee meetings, so she'll be starting to set those up and see when we can meet. Holidays coming up and whatnot, it'll be take some time. So
yeah, good question, Gino. And I would say I would always encourage all board members to be involved as you can. You know, you can also attend committee meetings as a audience member. And that might be a good idea for Gino and Pete to also kind of catch up on what's going on with some of those committee meetings, or just check them out one time so you can see how they operate. Because who knows, one day you might be on it yourself. And also, please feel free to use Camille and Mark if you have questions or ever feel like you need something clarified or anything. Mark is a great resource for you. Just send Mark an email. He's always going to be your first point of contact. So everyone in this board of directors, additionally, if there's extra feedback or whatever after these conversations, please send Mark an email. I know he'd be happy to respond and work with you. Okay, any other comments before we close? Okay, great. Thanks for all engaging tonight. Your feedback is very much appreciated. Oh, Don, go for it.
No, I was just waving goodbye.
Oh, okay, that was a good way to go out. Officially adjourn the meeting at 5:34, and I will see you all soon. Thank you so much for everyone that attended tonight. Appreciate your time.